We have been told that at 12:25 a.m. on August 31st, 1997, a black Mercedes sedan crashed into concrete pillar number 13 in the Alma Tunnel in Paris. An accident resulting from too much speed, alcohol, and drugs. Was there more than just paparazzi on motorbikes chasing the speeding Mercedes? Is it possible that the driver of a white Fiat Uno was really a British agent? And if so, what was his role in turning the Alma Tunnel into Diana's death trap? Princess Diana expressed fear of British Secret Service operatives working for MI5 and MI6. Was this fear finally and irrevocably proven correct? Was all of this really just a garden variety accident involving speed, booze, and drugs? Or is there something British and French authorities aren't telling us? We'll attempt to rip open the shroud of secrecy surrounding the death of Princess Diana when we come back. Do the actual circumstances, evidence, and witnesses of the Alma Tunnel crash support the Paris judge's conclusion that alcohol, drugs, and high speed caused a fatal crash? Was Henri Paul really drunk at the wheel? Dodi's father, Mohammed Al-Fayed, is certain that's not what happened in the Alma Tunnel.
It was a plot, conspiracy to get rid of Diana and my son, and I am not gonna rest until get the truth.
Within 24 hours of the crash, a campaign of disinformation was orchestrated, we believe, by the security services, which showed that Henri Paul, the driver of the car, was 3 times over the drink-drive limit. This was done before the body samples were even analysed. There were headlines in the British and the French press showing that this man was drunk as a pig. I went to Paris with Professor Peter Vanessis on Tuesday, just over a day after the fatal crash, and at that time Peter Vanessis asked for the right to conduct a separate independent post-mortem, as would be the right either in the UK or the United States of America. But this was refused without reason by the French. He then asked to be present or have another person present at any subsequent examination of the body so that they could take an independent view of that examination. That was not only refused, but on the Thursday, the French conducted themselves a second examination of the body when they allegedly then found drugs in his blood. Some months later, we received a toxicology report which showed that there was a trace of drugs in a hair sample taken from Henri Paul. It showed also that the hair sample had not been properly measured, and the drugs in that hair sample were too small to measure. They were the sort of drugs that half of France takes as an antidepressant. Irrespective of these findings, the press persisted in this report that there was a cocktail of drink and drugs sufficient to cause Henri Paul to lose control of the car.
And the press labeled Henri Paul an alcoholic, even though tests showed his liver to be normal. It was solely on the back of the highly suspicious blood analysis that the crash was declared an accident. But do the blood tests really match Henri Paul's physical appearance and condition immediately preceding the crash? And are we certain that it was Henri Paul's blood? Perhaps the best judges of Henri Paul's physical condition are the people who spent time with him that night. Many of them who were around Paul that night were asked if they noticed any unusual behavior.
On Monday morning, as soon as the press reports came out that Henri Paul was drunk, I saw Kes Wingfield. He was the nearest living witness to what happened on that Saturday night. He was the other bodyguard working with Trevor Rees-Jones and had been with Henri Paul all day whilst Henri Paul was driving the backup car. He described his demeanour as exactly the same that night as it had been all day. He said he was not drunk.
Henri Paul had passed a rigorous physical exam to renew his pilot's license just 3 days before the crash, and the exam revealed no indications that Paul was a heavy drinker or a user of drugs. When French officials finally released a copy of the final autopsy report to the families of the deceased, they immediately engaged independent forensic pathologists to review the written report. Their conclusions were astonishing. Professor Peter Vanezis conducted a 12-hour review of Henri Paul's autopsy. His family wanted to know if there was any evidence from the examination indicating Paul was an alcoholic.
No, there was no indication of that at all at the autopsy.
There's ample evidence of negligent handling of Paul's blood sample. Blood samples taken from him then were not refrigerated. This raises the real possibility of contamination.
If samples are not stored at reasonably cold temperatures, then you have the added element of the blood actually slightly decomposing and producing extra alcohol within the blood. And this can give you problems with the analysis.
Blood alcohol content was lacking, but what they did find still has pathologists shaking their heads. Henri Paul's autopsy also revealed the inexplicable level of 20% carbon monoxide in his blood. How could that much carbon monoxide get into his bloodstream? Had Paul shown any symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning before the crash?
The level that was measured in Henri Paul at the time that he died would indicate that, say, some 2 hours prior to his death, he might have had a level of 30%. But if you got a level of about 30%, someone would have a decided headache. You would have real throbbing in the temples. The headache would be unmistakable. There would be certainly a lack of coordination. It doesn't strike me, when you look at the pictures of Henri Paul, of a man who is really suffering. It doesn't look as if he's got a headache. He's not massaging his temples to try and reduce the pain in any way. He seems to be someone who is quite relaxed in his environment, in control. He's talking to people, giving orders.
The official French report of the accident adopted the explanation put forward by the official French pathologist and toxicologist, that the carbon monoxide could have come from the airbags. Is this even possible?
Mercedes-Benz have confirmed that there is no carbon monoxide in their airbags. Their airbags are designed to save life, not to kill. In any event, Henri Paul died instantly. He could not have drawn a breath. We've also checked the blood of Dodi from sampling, and it shows that he had no carbon monoxide in his blood. The statement put out by the French that the carbon monoxide in Henri Paul's blood was due to the airbags was blatantly false.